is actually twofold. Can you please share with us, what does racial healing mean to you and why is it important?
Thank you, Dr. Raical. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Ann Alvarado, Superintendent of Freeport School District. But before I answer that question, I mean, come on. I'm in orange and black today. Freeport, varsity boys basketball regional champions. It has been a long journey of 14 years, and this woman sitting next to me would know all that story. She's a Freeport diehard lifer. Anyway, what an incredible win for the boys. I was just so happy for them and their family. That's part of racial healing. When you begin to experience what it's like to win because you worked so hard for it. So to me, racial healing means it's a process. It's not a one day. It's wonderful that there's a national day of racial healing, which was January 16. That was rescheduled today because of the weather. But this is not, it shines a light on the importance, on the process that we all have to go through, but it truly starts with ownership. When I walked in here, I hope you don't mind sharing our conversation. I was just having a conversation with Pastor Donnelly, and he says, I'm a little nervous. I thought, that's okay. That's okay. Because we all sometimes avoid the landmines. You cannot just avoid the landmines of racial healing. At some point, you have to unearth and remove it, but you only do that when you take risks. So racial healing doesn't ever happen, and that's why it's important, because of the vulnerability that each one of us come to the table with. Because our end game is to truly understand each other's stories. You have a story. I have a story growing up as an Asian, being raised in the Philippines, coming to a Western world. I have my story. And my story is as important as your story. But until we acknowledge that, we see ourselves more different than more the same. And to me, that is racial healing, acknowledging our vulnerability, the hurt that comes with our story. But at some point, while we talk about the hurt, we also have to come out of that hurt and make something transformational that lifts all of us up as a community so that our kids have a chance. And as superintendent, that's a crisis we go through every day. How do we continue to hear and listen to our children's story so that they are seen as a whole person coming into our school district? And that we understand, do our policies, do our structures, give them the resources that they need. And that's why I don't think we can afford not to do racial healing. It's hard work and it's a process, but we have to raise our hand and say, I'll be okay with that. And it will take time. Thank you.
So I spent a lot of time thinking about this question, and it really started with, what am I going to say? And why did they ask me? I'm a white woman. What am I going to be able to offer to the conversation in front of a group of people that I may or may not know? And so I kind of went back and started to think about who I am and like my story. And I'm going to not cry, but I'm a crier. But anyways, I started to think about like what's my story and how do I contribute and what is my role. And it came back to like, why did I move back to Freeport? Any of you who are born and raised in Freeport, I think many of us do the, I'm out. I was in high school. It's, my school counselors asked me, where am I going? What do I want to do? I'm getting out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going away. I'm doing something, and I'm never coming back. Well, here I am. Moved away, had an opportunity to work in a wonderful community in South San Antonio, ISD, and just decided at some point in my life that I needed to give back to the people and to the community that raised me. And so moved back to Freeport and made this my home again. And started, so that's where my thought process went, right? Like, where have I started? How did I get back here? And now my role. And Dr. Alvarado said a lot of things into my head. I was like, we should have let her go first. Right. We should have let her go first. Why did we let her go first? All right. Like, I want to be like, ditto. But truly, what does racial healing mean to me? Well, I'm going to start where I work. So Blackhawk isn't just the place that I work. It's also where I went to school. It's where my journey started, in the school district. And so I think of Freeport and Blackhawk as part of my history. And it has changed a bit since I went there. But when I look back at the composites, which I did one day and shared with Dr. Alvarado, it hasn't changed all that much in demographics, except it has become much more diverse. We are the most diverse school in our school district. We have 3/4 of our students that are black and brown, and the other, I should say 2/3, the other third represent white students that they'll actually come from places not like Freeport, Iraq, Iran, and so we've changed a bit in our diversity. And when I think about racial healing, I think about not only do what I need to know as a white woman leading a student population that doesn't necessarily look like me, and supporting our families, I need to be open to learning and understanding and listening to stories that may or may not be my stories. And being vulnerable and resilient and really trying to listen. And when I listen to understand and ask questions so that I can help navigate so many of the things that barriers that have been put in place, whether on purpose or unintentionally, to limit access to things that our students and our families need. And so with all of those things, for me, healing is building trust, building relationships, and being an advocate and speaking up.
Myself, originally from Mexico, state of Michoacan, came here when I was 15, year 1990, May 4th, 1990. So, came to Freeport about 9 years ago. I started working at Blackhawk, and now I'm a principal at Empire Elementary. It's been the greatest move for us to move to Freeport. We love the community, and there's still work to do on some fronts, and that's why this is very important for me coming into this space. For me, racial healing is really about building relationships. That's the foundation. When we talk about our students, our families in school, we always talk about relationships before the learning. You have to know the student, you have to know the family, you have to know their challenges so that you can better understand, and then you can deliver to the instructional components. Really, for us in this space, in this arena, and talk about racial healing, it starts with having a relationship with everybody, including those who disagree with you. And that's really where it happens, right? We're inviting those people to get to know each other first, because you need to have that relationship. I've always said that if you don't have a relationship, then you cannot have a conversation. There is no trust, there is no love, there is no understanding. So if we can come to a space and across races and hear each other's story, then we see each other as individuals, right? So, and that's how, what we tell our teachers every day, to see their students as individuals who have challenges, and that way you can support them. So as we engage in these conversations around trust, then we can be genuinely say how we feel, our struggles, our challenges. And as we uncover those challenges, we can finally begin to have a really meaningful conversation around change. And, and move together, of course, to make changes to the system. Within that conversation, again, that is deep based on trust and on relationship, you start to acknowledge the things that have been put in place, the systems that have been put in place to that benefits people at the expense of others. Like that needs to be put on the table, right? And but again, that cannot happen without having those relationships. So for me, racial healing again is creating that environment where we can have those deep conversations. That's it.
Good morning, everyone. Racial healing actually is personal to me because as an immigrant to this country, I also have my share of rejection, my share of being felt unaccepted, irrelevant, and that was just a few of the challenges that I went through assimilating in this country, and even until now, I still go through the trauma of not feeling comfortable going out because I feel that the people around me, don't trust my color, and they don't understand the value that I contribute to this community. And I feel that that trauma needs to be addressed, that needs to transform for our children, the future generation, to not bear that burden. I know that the children and the future generation will take over my role, and I don't want that burden to be added into the challenges that they will be going through. And racial healing to me is about spreading the truth and talking about the truth and highlighting and shedding light to the enslavement that went through with the black and the brown people that make this country great and unique. So we need to talk about that, that this country is not just about the white or what color it is, but it's about highlighting the value and the impression that truly this country is unique and this is a melting pot of various races and cultures, and it is that diversity that makes and adds value that makes this country truly unique and great. And another thing that I placed here in my little note is that racial healing to me is being able to endure the discomfort being around people who speak a different language than us. It's about being able to stand that I'm surrounded with somebody having a different skin color, a different culture, things like that. And I'm happy with Freeport. I love this community and I'm invested in this community. My first experience being in the US was at the Washington State, and I was not very happy with that. In fact, my coming to the US was just part of the US and the Philippine government agreement of sending teachers here to learn about the best practices of American education and implement that in the Philippines. That's the plan. But my family, it's more of, they like it here, I don't personally. And even until now, I still think of going home because my comfort zone is in there. So far, my experience in Freeport has not been as bad as my first few years. Yes. And the last thing, I think if I remember, I only experienced last year when somebody told me, oh, your accent is cute. There's no cute accent. I'm it's more of, oh, really? I just smiled at her, but at the back of my head, it's more of, I was wanting to say more than that reaction. Yeah. So, racial healing actually is about recognizing that each and every one of us is a blessing to each other, and we should be able to give that grace for all of us to embrace in solidarity, to build a safe community for our next generation, for them to dream big and live better lives together.
Good morning, everyone. I do want to apologize up front. In about 15 minutes, I am going to have to head out, going to a funeral. But these first two questions that have been asked are the ones most important to me. In the school district, I think I have a very unique perspective, a student of 145, the parent of a student of this district, a board member of District 145, and now an employee of District 145. And in every one of those steps, in every juncture, so many stories I could tell, but there's been something that hurt, something that injured my character, because I am a Black woman. When I think about what racial healing means to me, as I thought about it, I narrowed it down to 3 R's: recognizing, repairing, and refusing. Recognizing the wrongs that caused the hurt and the damage, repairing the damage, and refusing to re-injure. If a child scrapes their knee, whether it draws blood or not, the first thing they want is a Band-Aid. What they don't realize is that a Band-Aid does not heal, but a Band-Aid protects the damage. If we keep ripping off the Band-Aids and re-injuring that same area, we are never going to go forward. Why is it important? If things don't change, things don't change. If people don't change, processes don't change. If people don't change, systems don't change. So it's up to each of us, each individual, but then as a community, as employee groups, to do our part in racial healing.
So as we're moving on to our next part, a couple more questions, I want to first just stop. As we're talking about racial healing and I'm listening to stories, my heart first wants to say, I am so sorry that Mr. Galeacion experienced what he experienced, right? We need to apologize for that. For someone to say, this is not the place for me in this country, that he wants to go back home. And that's what healing is about, is that I don't know him personally. I have not experienced what he's experienced. I don't know all of what he's talking about. But my empathy and my concern for another individual says, I am sorry that you had to endure that. And for every one of our panelists, yes, go ahead, who've experienced that, this is what healing is about. And I'll talk more about that later. But Mrs. Paulette, since you are closest to me, we're going to start with you with our next question. And you really kind of leaned on it, and a couple of you did too, about the community. How can we get the community involved in building relationships to promote racial healing and equity?
Thank you, Dr. Randall. Today is the best start of anything that I have seen in this community. And we have to keep going forward. We have to get to a point that when we're having something like this, the library is not large enough. Maybe we have to go to the Jeanette Lloyd Theater that can hold hundreds of people. This momentum has to keep going. There are some people that should be in this room this morning that are not here, and you can tell them I said they should be here. Leaders need to be in this room. All races need to be in this room. All ages need to be in this room. Everyone needs to play a part in this. If this community is going to change, I have been here proudly in October, 60 years. And this is the most progress I have ever seen. So thank you to each one of you.
This is a good start, and I think we need to come up with more conversations of this kind. In a school setting, it's my vision for me to see races and languages being highlighted by the school doors, because we want to spread awareness that being an American doesn't only mean speaking English. So why don't we post in the classroom doors, like, somebody in this classroom is speaking Filipino, somebody in this classroom is speaking Chinese, things like that. Those are just little steps for us to create awareness about the diversity and the beauty of that in the community. Another thing is that we should be doing a lot of cultural unity fair events. I know Lincoln Douglas last year had that event, which was great. I know Jones for When I'm Connected is coming up, has a plan of like putting that up, and we suggested that because that's actually part of the healing process. My way of healing myself is to constantly prove that I can fare just like my colleagues in the building. And last year, I participated in the ISB Teacher of the Year, and I was granted the Northwest Regional Teacher of the Year. That helped me a lot. That convinced me that, you know, I'm not dumb as a teacher. I'm not low compared to the locals in the area. And this year again, I participated in that Golden Apple Excellence in Teaching, and fortunately, I'm part of the top 30, so, which is great. And so I told my family, we need to keep investing to this community because this community has treated us. And so I want to thank Freeport City for being such a loving community. And I also want to thank the district and the board members for fully supporting the affinity group. We are having that group in the district right now. They provided us funding for that, for us, people of color, to come together, be ourselves, talk about our differences and how can we move forward and assimilate this community and free from the traumas that we've experienced and our ancestors have experienced in the past. And that's actually beautiful, and I hope that from the teacher level, that will go down into the building level of like kids be having their own affinity groups. Yeah, that's my vision.
Well, Mr. Commission, I have a couple positions open at Empire. If you want to come in. Yes. So how do we bring this to Freeport, right? And it goes back to a conversation, a comment that Dr. Randall said earlier. It should not end with this meeting. It should not end with this gathering. I talked a little bit earlier about building relationships, but building relationships with those who disagree with you. Now that's tough. How can you reach out? How can we reach out? Everybody in this room, reach out to those that we disagree with. I have a friend that I can think of, and he disagrees with me, right? And having those conversations, we have a space just across the hall. It's a cafe right there, Colombian, right? That's a good place to start. It starts with all of us, each one of us, to go out and have those difficult conversations, because that's really what it is. And then, of course, you take it to a bigger event, but it starts individually.
Well, so I'm going to start with something that Dr. Randall says a lot, and that she's not equity. And she reminds us that she may be ahead of the equity department. She may lead equity, but that she's not equity. That we're each responsible for equity. And so that resonates with me and sticks in my head as I think, having been a member of this community as of Tuesday, 55 years, seen and heard and been a part of a lot of wrongs and a lot of things that have happened that shouldn't have happened, and we need to acknowledge them, because that's the beginning, right? Also, going back to the white woman thing, it's hard to talk about as a white woman, or just, yeah, a white woman. I was just thinking just being white, but I am also a woman, and that comes into play, right? And learning to be brave and courageous and vulnerable and having conversations that might make me uncomfortable because I may be worried about being judged or thought of in some certain way, but I acknowledge that I have biases, and I feel like that's the first step, being someone who is white, that we have to be able to recognize in ourselves that not just because I'm white, we all have biases, right? All of us. But especially, I have to acknowledge that. And I have to think about what my biases are and how to overcome, how to accommodate, how to move past. That's the first step, I think, for all of us, as I look out and see so many white men and females that are in the audience today. So that's the first step that I think our community needs to make, is that we need to be able to become comfortable, or really uncomfortable, in having those uncomfortable conversations about how race affects all of us in our community. I feel like that is the real first step, and being brave to have those conversations.
I'm going to come from the lens of a superintendent in Freeport, as someone who was not born and raised in Freeport. I have a lot of hurt parents who've experienced hurt when they were students in Freeport. And those hurts are real, because when they see their own children almost going through the same experiences that they have experienced when they were students themselves, and the cycle to them, and I see it, of injustice continues. When we were in an equity steering committee not too long ago, we read the book Streetwise. I was asked to explain one of the chapters, and all I did was showed the team achievement bars with no words. I just did bars different heights, and I said to the team who's there, if this were an achievement bar, tell me which bar, the highest bar, what demographic that would be, without labeling anything on the bar. What will be the lowest bar? What will be the middle bar? Because we have normalized accepting that our African American students will be the lowest bar, because we have normalized that. That's the story. We can't think outside that box. What if I told you in that classroom it was the African American students who had the highest bar? What will be your reaction? No way. That's how much ingrained racism, that's what it's done to the way we think about people in general. So, from the lens of a superintendent, how do I continue to push the envelope when I have only 27% of students who are Black, 15% Latino, but they make up the highest disproportionately when it comes to suspensions? But if we normalize that and we say, but that, and it's not just Freeport, ladies and gentlemen, this is across the country. Socioeconomic, race, gender, everything. But if we continue to normalize the narrative, why are we expecting anything different is going to happen to our community? So to me, the first step is at different layers. And we have to accept there will be people who are so ingrained in that belief There is no racial healing day that's going to change their mind. But we have to outnumber those individuals. We can't keep walking on eggshells and apologizing for challenging that status quo. Because that means don't expect anything different. We will be here in 2 years. We will still be having the same conversations and nothing's changed.
And Dr. Alvarado kind of mentioned this when she talked about the narrative, the story. So our final question is a little bit twofold. One, what could make Freeport a more just community? What could make us more just? But if you had to tell someone who didn't know Freeport, the story of Freeport, what would you tell them? And so we don't have all day. We're going to be very quick. We're going to end with Dr. Alvarado. But just what would make Freeport more just? And if someone who didn't know Freeport, what would be the story you want to tell them about your community?
My answer for what would make Freeport more just is simple. More just people. More just people. I think it would take me a long time to explain Freeport to someone, but like anything else, there's good, there's bad, there are things we are working on, there are things we are stuck in. But I can honestly say there is so much more good in this city. But again, more just people will make it more just.
I think we have to be very conscious about making more actionable steps for us to completely eradicate the word racism. Like, if we can make an effort to be today the last day for us to hear the word racist, then let's do that for our community to be a just community. And I hope that, I know I've heard of weeks ago somebody being told, go back to your country, that's so painful. I hope that that's going to end. And I hope that that's going to be the last time that we hear that. And that if you'll want me to tell about Freeport, I all have beautiful stories about Freeport. We bought our house here, and we had conversations with my wife, because my wife is also a teacher at Jones Farm, that we'll probably retire here. It's actually a beautiful community, and I'm honest in saying that. In fact, I asked a lot of friends to come over, and I also brought couple of them here, and I hope that the district will fund for the visas for us to have more. But there was one incident of my friend who applied here and was told that he and his wife will have to go a demonstration on top of the screening process that Freeport School District is giving as part of the hiring process, that they have to do a demonstration lesson because they have a little accent. And I told those couple, don't come, that's stupid. No, that's not fair. A district cannot change the hiring process just for an accent. So right now, that couple is hired at North Dakota. So it's a win for them, not for us. So I hope that's gonna change, and with that affinity group, and I hope that this organization will create more ties with the FSD affinity group for us to work together and expand this healing process that we need to do.
I always tell them to come to Empire. Anyways, how do we advance this work and create a more just? By the way, Freeport, greatest move for our family to move to Freeport. We love it. Originally from the suburbs of Chicago, moving out here. There's no traffic. Yes, it's a very nice community with a lot of potential to do better, of course. So how do we advance this work? Dr. Alvarado mentioned some work that we did in the equity, in our equity committee at the district, and it was looking at data in schools. And in particular, what's known as street data. That's the data that goes very deep into enriching at the individual level for a student. We can look at data, of course, at a high level, and decisions can be made, of course, like if we look at attendance, and we see that it's down by a certain percentage, then we can take action, right? Do an initiative for the whole school. But then when you go deeper into each individual story for those students, the students who are showing up with attendance challenges, and understand them, right? And gather data at that level, now it becomes more equitable. And that's really how you do that, is to put that in your school improvement plan, right? And take action on it and assign people to work on that front. So really, that's how one of the initiatives at Empire Elementary that we're looking at, and really at the end of the day to reach students at a deeper level and understand their stories and create a more just society here in Freeport.
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick, but we have a gray vehicle that is Honda Accord that is blocking someone who needs to get out with the license plates PNU. So if you have that vehicle, it's a gray Honda Accord, you're blocking someone in who needs to get out with the license plates PNU. We have several individuals who are attending a funeral and they need to get there. So if that's your vehicle, please help this person out.
And I'll just add one more thing to my conversation, and I'll end with this. It's really listening to the students and having discussions with the students themselves so that we can gather that data. Now that's at that level that we need to go as a district to help our students.
So I'm going to come at it from a different angle and not talk about how to get there, but talk about where we're at. And a vision for Freeport is already occurring every day at Blackhawk. Stepping into PE, music, art, but I'm going to use the gym. I was just recently in there observing and watching all the students play together, very unaware of each other's races, the countries they come from, and they're having fun. They're communicating, they're competitive, they're laughing, they're struggling to win, and they got that grit. It's a beautiful thing, and it's really what our community should look like outside of the walls of a gymnasium at Blackhawk.
Right. Yeah. First, I would like to express my gratitude. This is my 5th year as superintendent here in Freeport, and this has been a life-changing experience for me because it truly opened my eyes to the wonderment of small rural communities. But Freeport is a rural community with urban issues. What I'm going to share in terms of what we could do as next steps is very simple. I watched that basketball team last night, and that team has not won. I mean, it's different kids, different coaches, but that team has not won for 14 years. I was told 18 years.
And don't talk about boiling. Don't forget to mention boiling.
Right.
It's important.
Teams have rivalries, right? Sometimes the worst enemy of a team, this one is boiling. But it's the team itself becomes its worst enemy. Why? Because for so many years of losing, that has been ingrained in the mindset of our teams. Oh, we're going to lose again. We're never going to get there. But guess what? You have a coach who created a culture of winning. You have a coach who acknowledged, right, while he looks like most of the students that he coached, those kids also saw something in themselves
and they saw winners in themselves. And how much that mindset shift changed their narrative. I mean, you would have cried you saw those kids win yesterday. Because that victory was so palpable, because you just could feel a sense of, oh my gosh, we have carried this burden of losing for 14 years. We forgot what it feels to win. And that to me is our first space out the door, to walk out of here feeling like we won something this time, and it's just the beginning of winning.